Yeah, let's just dive deeper into indie games. And it seems like we're speaking to the history and the trend of it. Well, I add one thought, which is I wonder if sometimes there's like a line blurred between what is an indie game and what is like that next level up. I'll give two examples or three examples. One is Portal, where it's made by, I believe, college students, and then Steam just immediately picked them up. And now we don't think about Portal as an indie game because, well, I mean, it's not really. It's a gigantic publisher.
It's a franchise now, yeah.
But like the initial thought was, an initial prototype was made by, I believe, college students. I might be wrong. I have to check.
No, I think you're right.
I'll give another example. We Were Here. It's a much smaller example, like the escape room game. It was college students, college project, but it was a massive success, or relatively nowhere near the size of Portal, but still pretty successful. Stardew Valley. Single developer doing basically everything, but now it's massive, and I do think we think of that. We do think of that as an indie game, but it's like so big, and since they have a publisher now and all that stuff, but that line I think is being blurred at times.
Yeah, it definitely is. What makes it hard, I think, to get into that bigger budget is definitely if the game wants to go like multiplayer. Just having, a game economy behind it to make sure the ecosystem for multiplayer is allowing it to like flourish and maintain itself and stabilize. Like those are the things that make it so complex to make a novel game, mass appeal. And it's really only why we see, I think, mostly like shooters as the mass appeal. Shooters or MMOs are the thing that only two main genres you see in multiplayer spaces.
What do you think is behind the reason you mentioned you feel like there's an indie game like a boom time during like the early to mid 2010s? Like one big issue with indie games is discovery. Well, just any game, but primarily for indie games, it's let's say you make that next Stardew Valley. How do people find it? I think nowadays there's like maybe I'll throw out two ways. One, for a lot of these games, like Among Us, this game's it wasn't an overnight success. It's been out for a while. But some Twitch streamers picked it up. All of a sudden, streaming just massive virality. Yeah. That's how I heard of Stardew. That's how I hear about a lot of games. Is I see a streamer, play it. Now, how the streamers discover that's another conversation. Or like by the graces of, Gabe Newell at Steam or that publishing team, they decide to feature your title or something, or maybe Apple decides to make your little mobile game app of the day or something. But besides these like viral moments, like how does an indie developer reliably get their title out there? Maybe it's a big problem.
I think there's so many good ideas, but the hardest part is always like marketing it, right? Maybe marketing is the oversight. It's the business side of indie games. Like you go into indie because you have a passion to make a game, and you know that you can do this either by yourself or with a small team. But once you think about the business side of it, marketing, that's probably everyone's last thought in going indie is like, no, I want to make this purely because of expression. We want to make a good game that we really love, maybe a small fan base really loves or whatever. But it's marketing, it's usually the afterthought, it's probably not, and one, it's hard to bring on like a qualified marketer to an indie project if it's truly indie. Like we're talking startup or indie, like student level indie, and then there's like startup level indie where they have seed money already and they're still kind of indie, but they might be approaching, getting to double AAA type of budgets, but they start off like with really nothing. It's getting that sort of marketing resources on an indie student project is just hard. So you have to rely on like virality. You have to rely on friends of friends talking about it, or even just when you upload it to. Well, there was a time when, and I don't think it's there anymore, where Steam Greenlight was a thing where like you can submit games. Dude, so there was an open platform for like. You can make it. There was a base there for like you can make it, you can get in and you can make it, and there's a platform to try new games. People are reviewing and playing each other's games for free or whatever, and you're seeing like ratings go up. So then like which games are coming out on top as high quality, things like that. But I wonder now if the industry has changed where they're not allowing for as much of that anymore, just because of the resources that aren't around, or because for a game to make it, it's going to cost you money to like use the resources of this platform like a Steam or example to get games out there, and so those things are gone now. So people probably rely on a lot of just self-marketing, branding themselves on TikTok or through a streamer or on Instagram or some sort of Kickstarter or YouTube page where they're posting updates. And that's where I'll see games nowadays. But it doesn't seem like it has quite that like let's go indie vibe that was a huge wave like 5 years ago.
Yeah, whenever I go to GDC, which I haven't been in a couple of years.
We should go.
For sure. I love going to those indie game promotion like talks, like specifically when they're obviously I go to some of the marketing talks, and I distinctly remember one where the guy was just telling people like, this is what you should do to promote a video or an indie game. And it's just, he went through a lot of like great like brass tacks strategies of, oh, you got to get that email list, send your game to these, promotions, cut your trailer this way. But at the end of the day, there's so many people trying to make a game, and there's just this discovery issue. On the one hand, as it becomes easier and easier to reach, wider and wider audiences, given the domineering nature of each platform, like Apple's App Store, Google's Play Store, Epic's Game Store, Steam. Like everybody has these platforms, so if they decide to promote your title, you can get visibility to a lot of people, and they handle the distribution, the actual like APK serving or whatever, file downloading. But it's like you have to make it through these platforms to get there.
Yeah.
So I guess we've talked back and forth, and it still revolves back. Like there are ways to get promoted, but it's like then how do you get to the place where you can be eligible to being promoted, and all the while as an indie dev, especially I think about like the one woman crew or two people or college students, like, well, they got expenses. They have to survive for like 1 year, 2 years to make that game, and it's like how many units do they have to sell during that time to at least be like ramen profitable, and then like how many people actually just release the game and make enough money that it would have been worth their while. Not many. So it's tough.
And the path, I think, it exists at different points in your career. Whether you're just trying to break in, you can't make it in AAA. Like I was there too, right out of college, hard to get into a AAA studio. There's always that thought that crosses your mind as an aspiring game developer. All right, time to go indie. Like, it's time to just live in the mom's basement, go move back home, download Unity, Unreal, and just go to town and just make it myself or work with other people, do it on a budget right out of college, and maybe work at another job. But in the meantime, I'm fueling this indie project on the side. But even now, I've been in the industry like 5 years now, there's still that calling of like, well, I'm not making my game that I wanted to make, or a game that maybe I always envisioned myself working on in the industry. So maybe now I can go indie. And so like, there's definitely a group of like-minded devs I know share the same feeling of, all right, just save enough money, work in the industry long enough, get enough experience, and then just like go off grid, quit the industry altogether, and then just make my own thing on the side. One with the intention to actually make your own money through it, or others just literally as a way of just expression and a break, just to scratch that creative itch and do it on their own without having to be held back by having to put so many hours to their day job. But even that right now crosses my mind, like, should I just quit my job and then save enough money and then make my own game, or should I just stick around? And the thing about sticking around too is like, what if I have a chance to actually make that game in the industry? Those pockets of opportunity are so rare, but then you think about that too, because then that solves so much of the other side of it. It introduces its own set of problems, but it also solves the whole, well, then maybe I don't have to worry about the publishing parts of it, the marketing side, because we have whole units, some development departments who can handle that. I can just be focused on making it, which is why if you feel like you want to do that on your own, like make a game go big on your own, you have to, as its own, like as the founder of that game or that studio you're trying to do, you have to think about all those things. You're not even making like the game anymore as much as you are just making a business, right? It's just a business at the end for yourself. And
there's so many interesting things that you raise. Like one, just let's take Stardew Valley as an example. If I had to break down, and I'm making a lot of assumptions here, but I don't know how many years it took to make Stardew Valley, but let's say, for example, it had a 10-year life cycle. It started 10 years ago. I don't know how long it took. I imagine like the most creative, energizing, or at least creative part was like that first year, 2 years, 3 years, where he's coming up with the idea, writing down the story, the first time seeing his farming mechanic work, that early innovation happens. And then like what has even Concerned Ape been working on for the past few years? It's a lot of like what you described, this big picture stuff of, okay, now we have a publisher, like how do we bring it to mobile? Now it's about porting. How do we add co-op? How do we optimize the performance? How do we, it's a lot of these bigger, like no longer indie game issues, it's these like bigger AAA titled stuff, like you mentioned, right?
Totally.
It's like, how much of that creativity do you get now when you go big, and I mean, this is like a luxury problem. It's a nice problem to have, right? It's so many people love the game that, like, I loved it when he had a co-op. I could finally play Stardew with with other people. But going back to just why do you go indie? Maybe it is to pursue that original vision and to be in that early days of that creativity.
Yeah, I think that's always the funnest. I think if you ask most game devs, like that's the funnest part that's the most thrilling part probably is just seeing what sticks.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're throwing ideas on the wall and you're in that purest form of just blue sky creation. You're trying out new concepts. You're thinking of the world, the story. You're thinking about mechanics, and literally anything goes. And so that part is literally like setting sail into the new world. Like you're just thinking super wide.
Mm-hmm.
It's the funnest part for sure, and it's so rare to do that in like a professional setting, because most of the places you join, like if you're in the games industry right now and you move to another project, more often than not you're joining a project that's already gone through that phase, and so now when they're hiring,
mm-hmm.
it's the part where they're just trying to build it.
Right.
So you're no longer ground zero. You're joining in like in production. There might be some rare opportunities for like we're starting a new unannounced
mm-hmm.
R&D project, or if you go to Riot and you join their R&D team, like you're going to be ground zero to those things. But those opportunities to join are really rare too, where you mm-hmm. and a place where you join and your voice matters, where you can be in that space and you can contribute an idea. You're not just a number like, okay, I have the idea, you make it for me. Like that's so hard to find. But you want to feel that right away, you just quit your job or
mm-hmm.
just open up Unreal or Unity and just start making your own thing, right? And you can chase that. But it's knowing that you're doing it as a side project and a hobby versus no, this thing can actually come to life and mm-hmm. be made for other players to enjoy around the world with a big budget and with a team behind it. It's just really hard to find, but when you can find those opportunities, they're just amazing.
Yeah, this theme of like, in the gaming context is indie, AAA. But this concept of the small time, the big time, and going off to do your own thing, it exists in like every industry.
Totally.
Right? In tech, it's the startup versus the big incumbent
corporate
billion-dollar company. And it's like at dinner we were talking about like pattern recognition we were talking about pattern recognition in like the MMA like sports context. But literally like when we talk about indie, it just makes me think about like what the industry I'm in, tech startups, it's the exact same emotion. You want to join a startup to be in the early days, to make your voice on the product matter. You want to join a startup to just have that bigger impact, that freedom, that be in that building phase. And you join a AAA company or you join a big tech company to do that, to specialize in that one little thing, to be stable. I mean, I could take the analogy even further, but I'll stop there.